Welcome in, Buckeye backers. We are back and we got something to look forward now. Like Ryan Day said, there is a target in sight. We know who we're playing. We know what to prepare for, and times are changing. Hey, night game in the shoe. We broke the chains away from big noon kickoff, and maybe it's the worst time ever to have a night game in the middle of December when it's going to be cold as hell. We want those night games, in early fall where it's nice and beautiful out, but hey, we'll take it. Recruits can be there. Everyone's going to love it. At least we got our one night game this year. I guess a second night game, but the first one really didn't count. But before we get any further, welcome in, Vegas. We got to get to that intro, baby. So here we go, coming right at you. Boom.
Proud of our young people, and most especially in 310 days in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
No, Princeton's going to throw for it. Got to get it off. They go for the ball game. Touchdown! Touchdown! Michael Jenkins on 4th and 1. Holy Buckeye! Under pressure, throws it. Incomplete. The Buckeyes win.
It's so easy to be average. The hell with that. We don't want to coach average. Did you push yourself to be great today? Did you do it? If you didn't do it, you lost today.
Dale Jones gets the snap, fakes a run, drops back to pass, fires long. Down the right side, going toward the end zone, and it is caught! Touchdown! And it's Devin Smith again. Samuel cuts it back. Ohio State wins!
Pitches to Archer Griffin, number 45, and Griffin fighting up the sideline. And he gets it into Michigan territory. A great individual effort. From the 20-yard line. Eddie Jordan finds the hole.
Smith in trouble. Spins away from it. 40, 45, 50. 35. Troy Smith.
To throw. Steps up. Delivers deep down the field. He's got a receiver. Olave. Touchdown. Buckeyes.
And a spot in the national championship game. It's on the way. No good. He hooked it. And Georgia is going to survive.
I haven't scored a touchdown in a long time, so it felt good. Give all the credit on the word of God. And when I'm coming around the edge and I see JT punch it out, I said it downstairs. There's no chance in hell I was diving on that ball. I was trying to scoop and score it no matter what.
Howard runs it. First down, Moore slides down inside the 40. Ohio State.
The chapter of this season is not over yet. The last possible loss that we could have is going to be in the shoe. Those seniors got to go out with a win. They got to get that night game. They got to have some fun. They got to be fired up. All right? We're not going to get another loss. We got to go in against Tennessee. Tennessee's a good team, and we got to be prepared to play. They got to have that juice, man. They cannot go out with another 2 straight losses in the shoe. Could you imagine that? If that's your senior year, you all come back to earn the right to beat that team up north. But now we got to go after those Vols, man. That's got to be what they earn. That's got to be the motivation. Our last game in the shoe's got to be a win, right?
I don't think you need any more motivation than the fact that you have 4 games to accomplish everything you want to accomplish here. So whatever gets you hyped up for this week, finally playing under the lights. Let's hope the lights are still working at Ohio Stadium. Not sure they've been used in a while, but
gotta dust those off, huh?
You do. They got a bunch of cobwebs on them. If you need to motivate yourself for this game, then you don't have a pulse. This is playoff football in your home stadium. The first time in the history of Ohio Stadium, a football game will be played in the month of December there. Everything's out in front of you. Just go play ball.
We got our first goal Vols. Tyler Coggins, man. I hope that's not really just a Michigan fan and he's actually a Tennessee fan, but thanks for joining us, brother.
It is. I mean,
go for it.
No, I think this is a really tough matchup. I know we're really going to dive into the numbers, but you just kind of do a cursory view of this matchup. And I think it is a really tough challenge for Ohio State. I mean, I'm going to say this flat out. We're past the last few weeks. I think Ohio State has one of the best rosters on paper in college football this year.
Mm-hmm.
I think the coaching staff capable of doing it. So I'm going to put on my Buckeye homer hat and say I think they're going to win the next 4 games. However, we got to be unbiased when we bring some of this info. And the matchups here are really brutal for Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, we had to kind of audible to come to today because we want to get some of this information out there. We want to talk about the game. First, let's set the background a little bit. So, Tennessee got 3,500 tickets to this game. Man, it's truly a night game. Truly a home game at night, right? You're only giving out 3,500 tickets. I think that's more of a product of, the boosters. You can't say, hey, you guys got season tickets, but we're not going to give them to you for the playoff game. It's really a home game. It's going to be a home-style atmosphere. They're not splitting the stadium 50-50 or anything. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think they should get more? If Ohio State was traveling down to Knoxville, do you think Ohio State should be earning some more tickets?
No. And honestly, if the shoe was on the other foot and we're going to Knoxville and they gave Ohio State 3,500 tickets, I could not care less. Because this is 2024 and 99% of us buy our tickets on some ticket site anyways, which is
sure.
The norm. This was 1999. Yeah, I'd be outraged. Again, I don't think Tennessee should feel outraged. I wouldn't feel outraged if it was a reversal of roles because if Tennessee fans want to come to the game, they're going to buy their tickets on the secondary market and come to the game.
And Alex Bryan, yes, Ryan Day is going to find a way to fuck this up. That's a concern for everyone, but Ryan Day seems to do better. He seems to do better in the playoffs. It's Michigan. That's the thorn in his side. Yes, there's been some big games that he's lost, but there's also been those games where, he shouldn't have been there and he was, like against Georgia in the playoffs. I mean, that was a team that everyone thought was going to get smoked. There wasn't a chance, and they made it till the last possible field goal. They've beaten Clemson. They've got beat by Clemson. It's Ryan Day's good in bowl games, at least quality. Even if they lose, it's a quality game. It's not like they're not going to dance some team out like they did against Michigan. I think that was an outlier, and they had a bad game. But anyway, Tyler is a Vols fan. Let me get to more from the locker room real quick. One more. And Bradley, he says the Ohio State. At least capitalize the Bradley. Come on.
Absolutely. And Ryan Day has held tough in these type of playoff environments if you really want to dig into it. And we can say all we want about the Georgia game, missed kick. There was a lot of questionable play calling in that last minute or so that could have got that kick a little bit closer. But let's be straight, that Georgia team was elite. They sent, 15, 16 players to the NFL off that team. I mean, that was an elite football team. And make no mistake, Ohio State, Georgia was the national championship game. TCU, people forgot they even existed after that game.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
That was a national title game on the line, a little bit of questionable offensive play calling in the last minute. Otherwise, he put together a hell of a game. And he's going to have probably 10-day stretches here throughout all this. People aren't realizing he gets 2 weeks here. Really probably thought he was playing Tennessee for 3 weeks, probably watching a lot of film on him. Then after this game, there's 10-day break until the next game. 10 days after that, 10 days. So a few extra days to really think about it.
And another thing, Bradley, I got to get back to that. The Ohio State, we don't get to do that anymore until we beat Michigan. I'm done with the. Done with it until we beat Michigan. Or we win a national title, I'll bring it back.
I don't know about that, man.
And that's my thoughts right now.
I'm still
you got to earn that
How do you get it? Do you get it by winning the national title? You should have.
If you get the national title, it comes back. It's back quick.
I'm fine with that.
But anyway, just more thoughts on a night game in the shoe. Tennessee, the matchup couldn't have been any better. At least from I want to see this game matchup. One of the best in the SEC, one of the best in the Big Ten, and two teams that are some of the best in the country. If we would have played Indiana like it could have been and they moved us up, I don't want to see that again. Yes, it's great for moving on to the next round, but I don't want to see that again. I want to see a matchup, and Ohio State deserves to have to earn it after how they played against the team up north. And they're going to have to go through the gauntlet. I mean, yeah, they might have got screwed a little bit, but you don't lose to Michigan.
That's
You got to earn it. You got
That's
to earn it. That was the penalty to lose to Michigan. Everyone else, SEC teams are complaining. Alabama's complaining. SMU probably shouldn't have been there. Southern Methodist, I don't think deserved it, but they are. And we just got to play with what we got. And we'll get into that a little bit later when we start talking about the playoffs and the matchups and where everyone's seated. But let's get into some of this Tennessee. And before we do, man, the locker room's getting hit up. So let's get into that.
That's all right. I'll get
always,
into it.
Bradley, always the Ohio State University. I stand corrected. That's 2 against 1.
Right.
I'll bring the D back.
But
right.
I think
David,
that's something we got to look into, though, where you get a lot of these teams, right? They come into a playoff situation, or they're going to a 105,000 seat stadium under the lights. There are a lot of college football teams out there that would be intimidated by that. Let's make it abundantly clear: Tennessee ain't one of them.
And the weather's not going to be a problem.
It's not. Guess what? It's cold in Knoxville. It's cold in Columbus. It gets cold there.
It's just because they're in the mountains. Like, it makes no sense. They're in the South, so people think automatically, without, I guess, knowing or traveling at all, that it's going to be a problem for them to come and play in 30-degree weather. They get 30-degree weather. They get snow. They get ice. It's not going to be a problem to anyone in Tennessee, or at least
that's what I'm saying across the board here. This is an SEC team that goes to Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss. They go to large stadiums, hostile environments at night. They play in all different things. It gets cold in Tennessee. There is no real competitive advantage with any of this. This is not going to be a scared team coming into this playoff situation. This is going to be 60 minutes of Ohio State having to do everything they need to do to beat a quality football program.
Alex is stuck on they will never beat that team up north again unless they find their own Connor Stallions and cheat their ass off. Well,
you know what? We'll talk Michigan next August and Thanksgiving. Right now, we got 4 teams that we're going to have to beat in front of us, and none of them are named Michigan.
I like the passion, though. Alex has got his own podcast, Buckeye Bro Show, and it's a good one. So go check that out when you get the chance.
Gotta love a fellow Buckeye. Love you, man.
And Bradley, much love from South Florida. He will be feeling the weather if he comes back for the stadium. Oh, man. Coming back in the shoe. You should do it, man. Get that bitter cold. It's good for you.
It does. Clears the pores.
But thanks for coming in, Bradley. I think this is the second or third time he's been on the show with awesome comments, by the way.
But I think what you're seeing with all of this is you're seeing the blemish of this loss, right? Getting that 8 seed, right? Having to play a really tough first round opponent, knowing full well that you're going in to your second round playing the number 1 seeded team in the country. These are all the punishments that Ryan Day had to endure for losing that game. However, where he got to this point, he can rewrite this entire script by simply just winning the next few weeks here. So as much as a detriment it is to lose to the team up north and have all that riding on us, I'm going to put that to the side until this season's over. But now I really just want that focus on everything you want to accomplish is out ahead of you. You can rewrite this entire story. It's going to be really, really hard, but go execute. You want easy, don't come to Ohio State.
Yeah. Right now, we're talking playoffs. We're talking playoffs.
I was waiting for
actually, we have to. We have to do it. We're moving on. The target's in sight. Day said it. Hey, you can't change yesterday. And yes, we want to learn from it, but you can't change yesterday. It's over. Learn from those mistakes and attack this quality defense of Tennessee differently. But we got a question from Bradley, and it's a good question. If our boys get through this gauntlet to the Natty, any team from the other bracket scare you in the Natty, I think automatically win whoever it is. If we get through this part of it, that's the hardest part of it. If you look at this bracket, we got it up here now, and let me take the comment down so we can see it a little bit better. But yeah, Bradley, I think you're absolutely right. Who would we be scared of on the other side of the bracket?
Nobody. But let's be clear.
I think you got to say Georgia on the other side of the bracket.
Yeah, but put this in the context. In order to get to the final and play Georgia, you will have beaten Tennessee, Oregon, and Texas. After you've beaten Tennessee, Oregon, and Texas, are you scared of Georgia? I'm not. If we're playing Georgia in 10 days, yeah, I'm scared of Georgia in 10 days. But if you've seen that this coaching staff has brought this team together, cultivated this talent, and has beaten Tennessee, Oregon, and Texas, as a Buckeye fan, are you scared of anybody at that point? I'm not.
Well, yeah, I am. I'm going to be still scared of Georgia. Georgia's a quality team. They got depth all around. It's going to be, good on good everywhere. But the biggest concern would be if you get through that gauntlet, how much depth does Ohio State still have? Because we got to get through without an injury in offensive line, without one. Because we're already thin. So that's where my biggest concern becomes. Some other teams probably have some depth that could last it. We have no room for error at offensive line. Zero.
You could probably make that argument around a lot of college football.
Sure. But yeah, it would be the toughest way through, which is one of the things we're going to talk about. We're already in the playoff seeding, so let's get into it. We'll talk about what Tennessee has later. But you look at this seeding.
I like it.
Yeah, we're audibling. Orange Barrel, Reroute. We can't say Orange Barrel.
Omaha.
Yeah. You can't say Orange Barrel because we got the Vols coming in, so I got to get off that orange kick. But if you look at where Oregon is, Oregon got bent over backwards without lube on this seeding. They're the number 1 seed, and they have the hardest path in. And the only exceptions to it would be Ohio State or Tennessee. Number 1 seed faces the winner of Ohio State, Tennessee. Then they're going to face probably Texas, where Penn State at number 6 gets to slide right through Southern Methodist and then maybe slide right through Boise State, who I think they probably match up the best with out of anyone because they can stop the run.
Yeah. But we talked about this 2 weeks ago when Mike was on the show with us, that the seedings and the rankings really didn't matter until that Sunday. And when that Sunday morning came in, they were looking to match up based on television viewing. And we called it 2 weeks ago, how they wanted Notre Dame and Indiana because it's a cute little Indiana matchup. It's adorable. They wanted Ohio State to play Oregon again. They wanted that for television, and they didn't get it in the Big Ten championship game. So by hell or high water, they were going to make sure they got in the playoffs. And so I think if you're Oregon, and I know Oregon fan, they think that it doesn't matter who they play, so they don't really care. They're not upset at all. But if you're Oregon, you should be upset because you're the number 1 clear-cut team in the country as of right now. And you're right, you got a terrible draw.
And they're not complaining.
They
don't see
complain.
Dan Lanning out there tweeting stuff and be like, no, they're going to take on whatever they got to take because they have a quality, confident team, and they got a coach that just minds his business and gets to work. There's nothing you're going to change now by complaining. That's for the offseason. If you want to complain in the offseason. Now it's time to get to work.
Yeah, but this was clearly, and again, we talked about it on the last show too, where they really misseeded SMU and they painted themselves in the corner. They misseeded a lot of these, to be honest with you. And I hope the committee learns that they did what we said they would do, which was not punish teams for playing on a conference weekend, which I fully respect and I get. But you have to go in prior to conference weekend knowing how do you feel based on any possible outcome that could occur. And I think they really messed up with SMU. And flat out, I'll tell you, next year, they need to change the top 4 buys. It needs to be the 4 best teams in the country getting buys, because if you truly
agree.
Want a great semifinals and you want a great finals, what you ultimately want to do is say 1 plays 4, 2 plays 3, the winner of that plays in the national title. You, in essence, have the 4 best teams remaining, which was what you tried to accomplish the previous 10 years. So by seeding Boise at 3 and Arizona State at 4, if chalk holds out, you basically have Boise State and Arizona State in there. They're probably not the best teams in the country. They just got a favorable draw.
Yeah, that's crap that they got a bye in the first round while all these other teams that play a better schedule are out there playing. Yeah, I love having a home game at Ohio State, and it was kind of nice to have a week off for Ohio State, maybe to kind of collect their thoughts and not be in that Big Ten championship game, because obviously they needed it the way they played in their last showing. But man, oh man, I'm ready for this. And yes, there are some changes that need to be made to the playoffs. And let's get into this question from the locker room. Mike G, he's got a couple good questions stringing along, and he wants to know how the fuck Ohio State was able to get home field advantage against Tennessee. What did Ohio State do? First of all, their loss, the first loss against the number one team, right, by 1 point at their home field. Then 2 of their quality wins were against teams in the playoffs. They're one of only 2 teams in the playoffs that have played 3 teams in the playoffs. All right, yeah, and you got a question about Indiana. Indiana is probably artificially inflated, but we're going to see that again against Notre Dame real quick. Got spanked by Ohio State, but matchups are matchups, and teams are teams, and you never know till they play the game.
Also,
what did the Vols do? What did
they do? Yeah, great question. Let's see here. And by the way, I'm going to take the committee's approach, which I love, which is, are you ranked currently? Not were you ranked at the time of the game, which I think is a false premise, because it's not about what the AP poll said you were in August. It's how you finished this season. Tennessee has 1 ranked win on their schedule, and it was to Alabama, who's not even in the playoff. You have a loss to a 6-6 team, which, by the way, is worse than Ohio State's loss to a 7-5 team. That's all you got. And you lost to Georgia, which is a quality loss. So,
and what was the score of that, Georgia?
31-17. So Tennessee,
and it's a bigger loss too.
It's a bigger loss. Tennessee has 1 ranked win against the 13th seed. Ohio State has 2 wins against playoff teams, and Tennessee's loss was worse than Ohio State's loss. So that is exactly why they have home field advantage.
And the committee said splitting hairs, so it was close.
Not splitting hairs. We just laid out a bulletproof case as to why they're the 8th seed. Bulletproof.
And you still got to do it. Someone's got to get that. If Ohio State would have had to travel to Tennessee, I wouldn't be complaining. They had that loss. Like, if you want to change the narrative, win your games. Win them. And against quality teams. Win those damn games. That's the only way to change it. W's change the narrative. So don't complain if you have too many L's.
We're going to get into that because I'm starting to get to a point where it's no longer just W's. I'm going to go with the SOS approach moving forward because I'm going to keep banging that drum. Your strength of schedule has to start meaning something.
It does have to matter. Absolutely has to matter.
It does.
And Tennessee has a good strength of schedule. I mean, they played in the SEC and they played quality teams in the SEC, unlike Texas.
This is not questioning Tennessee's strength of schedule. Not at all. They have a really good schedule. In fact, you can't fault them. NC State was a ranked team, fell off, not their fault. Oklahoma was a ranked team, fell off, not their fault. Florida's typically up, not their fault. Vanderbilt had been ranked at time to time. So not blaming Tennessee at all. We're going to get into this with some other teams I have a gripe with. Not a Tennessee problem.
And is Indiana really a top team all of a sudden? I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. I think that they are one of those teams that just happen to get hot at the right time and have that schedule that said, I can beat anyone. Not to fault them. They're a lot like Southern Methodist. Like if they played each other, maybe they need to have playing games for teams that don't have a good strength of schedule. I don't know.
I mean, and that's where we're really breaking this down, where a couple faults here. One, the top 4 best teams in the country deserve buys. That's how you're going to get an elite semifinal and an elite final matchup ultimately. And there 2, you rewarded teams for having bad schedules this year. And I think that sets a horrible precedent moving forward, that when you reward Indiana for a joke of a schedule and you reward SMU for a joke of a schedule to get into the playoffs, what you are screaming out to everybody, and the AD at Alabama affirmed this, why am I playing tough teams?
Yeah, and that's sad. That's sad. But guess what? None of their losses were in the non-conference. They were all in conference, so you're still going to have to play them. The only way they change that is by doing what they used to do and not schedule Georgia, Alabama ever for 10 years.
No, but that's what I love the narrative that came out of this season. And the narrative out of this season was 10-2 gets you in the playoff. So go play a tough schedule. 10-2, if you're in the SEC or Big Ten and you go 10-2 and you play a tough schedule, you're in the playoffs. There's no debate.
Who's the cherry face? That must be you, Vegas.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's cool. No,
all right.
You call him, but Jamie.
Go Ducks.
Your brother. He's sitting
Jamie's
pretty,
a huge Ducks fan. Yeah, sitting good. But Jamie, how screwed are the Ducks in the seeding? Like where they got matched up was complete crap. They're the only ones that have a right really to complain. Maybe Georgia. Everyone else just needs to fall in line, man.
They did. They got a really bad seeding, and comes with that. Yeah, Chris is bringing some really solid points about Indiana's schedule being a fluke. And again, this is why I'm so upset that Alabama did not make it. And let's be abundantly clear, I hate everything about the South. Everything. All the way back to 1861, hate everything about the South.
I like classic rock. Southern rock is good.
I hate everything about it. With that being said, I truly believe Alabama should be in the playoff and SMU not, because I believe in punishing teams for bad scheduling. And I'm going to bang this drum now with Penn State. Horrible schedule. I want to read to you, just because I'm so ticked off at Penn State. I want to read to you Penn State's schedule next year.
Here we go. Let's look at it this year.
It's worse next year. Their non-conference schedule next year is Nevada, FIU, and Villanova.
Yeah, they're finding a way. They're going to get in the playoffs every year. But this year it was West Virginia
bowl game.
West Virginia, and they're going to a bowl game too. But they're not a good team.
But that's
Bowling Green, a MAC school. Kent State, a MAC school. Their best win is Illinois.
Garbage.
They did play really well. I'll give them that against Oregon. But this is where the schedules aren't equal. So how are we coming up with a Big Ten championship game when no one's schedule's remotely close? We have to go to 10-game in-conference schedules. Have to. Across the board.
Yeah.
That way you know who's in your championship game and it means something.
And I'll tell you right now.
If Penn State had to play, they didn't even play Michigan. I mean, which is a quality team. They didn't play Indiana, who ended up being a quality team. What's their next best win?
They didn't play Oregon either. I mean, right.
And they played Oregon in the championship game, which doesn't matter really if you lose that. I'm not counting that
in this perspective, right?
Because they're still ranked above Ohio State. And yes, we're not going to complain about it because we lost to the team up north. So we have nothing to complain about. We're sitting in a good spot. I'll take a home game, and it's awesome.
No, I mean, what I want to complain about is Penn State stop scheduling a cupcake schedule every freaking year and knowing that you have 2 tough games on your schedule every year. This has been Penn State's mantra for as long as I can recall. They schedule nobody out of conference, and they said to themselves all along, I play Ohio State and I play Michigan. I'm going to ride that coattails of those 2 games. And if I lose one or both, probably going to a really good bowl game. And now they're looking at this and saying, no matter what, we're going to schedule 2 tough games a year. And when next year Oregon beats us in the regular season and Ohio State beats us, we're 10-2 and we're in the playoffs still by beating Villanova. Penn State is a mockery of the Big Ten. And until they start scheduling better, the committee needs to punish them.
And I got a question. Why do all schedules that you go look at have the team that they played where they were ranked at the time you played them? I want to know what they're ranked now when I look at a schedule.
Because that's how ESPN has spun the narrative around the SEC being good for 20 years is all the SEC teams get ranked at some point in time. So when you play the 24th ranked team and you beat them and they end up being a 6-6 team, it looks really good that you beat the 24th ranked team at the time. It's marketing.
It's crap. It's a worthless schedule to look at it when it shows.
And that's why
22.
I agree, but that's why I appreciate the committee being very clear about this in saying we're looking at ranked wins at this point in time, not ranked wins when you played them. And I think that's a really
correct,
good
and that's absolutely what it should be. All right, here we go. Let's get into what Jamie said. Honestly, not the best draw for the Ducks. Got to beat the best to be the best, and that's how you should take it, man. Like spoken like a true champion, right? We'll see how it all plays out.
Yeah, and I get that. And I respect the rah-rah speech, but and Dan Lanning's a smart coach, right? He's never going to publicly say this, but privately, I'm going to say, listen, I got the number 1 seed in any bracket that has ever existed in the world. The 1 seed, by and large, should have the easiest path to the finals. That is why you're the 1 seed. That's what a bracket means. So when you take the 1 seed and you give them the tougher path, you're basically telling everybody being the number 1 seed is not relevant. It goes against everything that a bracket stands for.
Be more. I hope Tennessee stomps on one of the funniest things on the internet is to watch people that have no life and live through the football team's cry. I think that's the definition of a fanatic, a fan. So I'm pretty sure there's some of those in
there's a lot of those.
Every single fan base.
Appreciate you watching. Support our sponsors.
The team up north is called Michigan, you spineless loser. That's where that comment came from. Got it. All right. You want Tennessee to win. All right. Well, enjoy whatever bowl game you're in because I haven't even scrolled down that far yet.
I think it's a ReliaQuest Bowl or something. I don't know. Nobody's going to watch, so it doesn't matter.
You could make a 15-game conference schedule, and it would still be weak because the conference sucks. Thank you, Levi. There is good and bad. The conference is a lot better in the Big Ten, but it does have some work to do on the bottom levels and the mid levels for sure.
It does.
And that's why Ohio State fans get pissed off when you don't beat the better teams, right? Because the middle of the pack and the lower pack is honestly garbage. You should beat Illinois every year. You should beat, in most years, Indiana every year. You should beat the Purdue's every year, the Northwesterns every year, the Minnesotas every year. So Ohio State fans have no mercy. It should happen. It's supposed to happen. You're built for it to happen.
It is.
Beating Minnesota, USC, Washington, and Illinois. West Virginia is another decent win.
Yeah, they're really not. And we are trying
not.
to look at like SEC schedules too, right? We have to be frank. SEC has a lot of good teams. And when you're playing that kind of schedule, right, and you're getting kind of beat up by a lot of good teams, Penn State's schedule it's just not that good. And we can sit around talking about 6-6 Big Ten teams all we want. That's not pushing you.
And maybe that's the case. You mean in the history? Probably. Most of the MAC schools are in Ohio, so
I think he means
like to play Ohio schools.
I think he means this year.
But their conference schedule is what balanced it out. Penn State didn't have to travel to Oregon. Penn State didn't play Indiana. Penn State didn't play the team up north, which is still a good team. Obviously, they weren't having the best year this year, but they still had quality members of their football team. They had a great defensive line, and we ran right into it.
No, I'll sit here and I'll say, maybe correct me if I'm wrong. Outside of scheduling home and homes with Auburn, who is a fledgling middle-of-the-road SEC team year in and year out, they don't schedule non-conference games. They don't schedule tough ones. West Virginia is not a tough team. Nobody respects the Big 12 in any way. They don't schedule tough games. And next year, I can start looking at a lot of people's schedules. You know, Ohio State has Texas. Michigan has Oklahoma. Penn State has Villanova. I rest my case.
And yes, Ohio State had a piss poor non-conference schedule this year. They made up for it in conference, though. And it was going to be bad until Indiana creeped up there and Penn State did great. So we're about to find out in the playoffs, boys.
They did, and that's where
that's fair. That's definitely fair.
22, right? I don't think Indiana's a playoff team. I don't think they're a very good team. And yeah, you're right. And I will say Ohio State, if you kind of look at Indiana as being questionable, that's a pretty soft schedule Ohio State has by and large. They got screwed because they had a home and home against Washington. Obviously, that didn't come to fruition, becoming a conference team. They filled the spot with Marshall instead. Yeah, you're right. It is definitely on the weaker end of the schedule game,
Piss
but
poor.
it's still stronger than Penn State's.
It's piss poor. It's not on the weaker end. It's pretty damn
Yeah,
bad.
it is. But I'll tell you,
it's no Indiana non-conference, but
it's no Indiana. But at least Ohio State can say we're rectifying that in 25 by playing Texas. What's Penn State doing?
Doug has a good point. This is one thing I hate. It seems like every year in bowl games, SEC has a better record against the Big Ten in bowl games because the 5th and 6th place Big Ten teams will face the 2nd and 3rd in the SEC historically. That does happen quite a bit. Like Michigan going to play Alabama. That's who they're playing in the bowl game. That shouldn't happen. Why is that happening?
I've never put much
and it always happens, at least in that what used to be the Outback Bowl. But that is a good point. I've noticed that historically too.
I just don't put much stock into records and conference records and bowl games and that being some litmus test to how good your conference is, because you got Big Ten teams playing MAC schools, right? And then you got Big Ten teams playing SEC schools. Same across the SEC. I'm sure they play Sun Belt and some other stuff. I don't know off the top of my head. Plus, you got the transfer portal. So you're not really seeing this case.
Brian,
I think how you figured this out, Big Ten, SEC, non-conference game every year. 18 versus 18. Let's see what it goes.
Yeah, Ryan, it's not Penn State's choice about the conference schedulers. And the conference has to get that right. They have to start scheduling some better.
Penn State's choice about non-conference. It's Penn State's choice on non-conference. Conference is a different argument entirely. And we kind of talked about this a little bit too. I think this is where it gets tricky at that conference level because nobody saw Indiana 6 months ago being a ranked team, let alone a playoff team. So you start looking at who you think is good. They end up being 6-6. You can say, well, we tried.
Mm-hmm.
So
Levi wants to know what to look forward to, offense versus defense, in those matchups. And I'm assuming you're talking about Tennessee and Ohio State. We'll get into that. Let me get more through this locker room. Chris was raised in the Big Ten and Big 8 football. Back when Nebraska and Oklahoma were playing 1, 2, and 3 win teams like Kansas State, Kansas, Iowa State, Colorado, no one cared about strength of schedule in the 80s. Well, that's because they weren't compared about other teams to get into bowl games. They were just picked. They were just picked by the AP at that time. Here's your national title. And two of you can claim it from different sources if you want to.
Nobody cares.
You want to talk about terribly weak schedules? Yes, we talked about Rutgers all in the preseason. They had no one on their schedule. They didn't play Oregon. They didn't play Ohio State. They didn't play Michigan. They didn't play.
And that's
who else? They didn't play Penn State.
Well, let's take this into context. And I was talking to you about this earlier this week. If you go look at Notre Dame, Miami, and SMU 4 months ago, you look at them and they say they all have a really tough game on their schedule. Two of those three, or I should say one of those three, I'm sorry, it's a non-conference game. The other two, it's a conference game. And that game was Florida State. So Notre Dame had Florida State on their schedule. Miami had Florida State on their schedule. SMU did. So you go back to August and you're saying, wow, that's going to be a quality win if they can pull that one out. That looks like a really good matchup. We're sitting here now at a 3-9 Florida State team. So you can do the best you can conference-wise or scheduling. All I ask is that you try. You know, if Penn State had Florida State on their schedule this year and Florida State is 3-9, I'm not blaming Penn State. That's not their fault that they tried to go a quality opponent and that opponent fell flat on their face.
And it's like this Texas one with Michigan. Texas tried to schedule a quality win.
Absolutely.
And Michigan just fell flat on their face. And it looked good at the beginning of the year, but the rest of their non-conference was pretty poor. And then they didn't end up playing anyone in the SEC other than Georgia, and they lost to them.
Yeah.
And then they played Georgia again, and they lost to them again. But, again, you got to give them credit. It was an overtime, close game in the championship game. They played Georgia well. I just don't know if that's something that can be comparable to where they're at in the playoff seedings.
But that's where, again, straight.
But you know what? Who cares? You play the game. Let's take that Oregon approach. Oregon's the only one that really can complain. They got screwed. Everyone else, you lost games. Quit complaining. If you don't want to, if you have 3 losses, don't complain about not getting in, especially if you don't have quality wins to back it up and terrible losses. Like if Ohio State would have lost another game this year, would I try to argue that they should get in? No. I'd be pissed off. Do better.
I agree.
Do better. Win your games. If you want in, don't let someone else control the narrative. Don't let anyone else decide for you. You got to show it. It's still a playoff, man. You got to make it to the playoff. You can't just get in because you have Alabama on your helmet, or they don't have that on their helmet, on your jersey.
But that's where I think it's kind of odd if you think about this. Let's say Ohio State beat Michigan, and then it's Ohio State, Oregon in the Big Ten championship. We were talking that if those two teams played, basically the loser was going to be the 5 seed. We thought that would be the case, that the winner would be the 1 seed and the loser would be the 5 seed, whether that was Oregon or Ohio State. But if you actually look at that now and say, okay, what if they were the 5 seed? You're starting off against Clemson. You play Arizona State, and then you play Oregon again. I mean, that's still not that easy of a path.
I somewhat like that approach to take the top 3 teams out of every conference, but I don't think the top 3 from some conferences deserve to be in there, i.e. the Big 12. Like, who else are you going to get in there?
No, I agree.
Do you want Iowa State in your playoff? And then what would be the next one? Colorado?
No,
I mean, it's going to water it down more. You need more Big Ten, more SEC, and in some cases, the ACC.
In extreme cases. But
I do like at least having one from every conference. I agree with that, because then you don't know if a conference all of a sudden scaled up and are good. I think they need more intra-conference games, and not necessarily just Big Ten and the SEC. I think the ACC has to play the SEC, and the Big Ten needs to play the Big 12, or vice versa, to see how good those conferences are. And that's where the matchup needs to happen. We all know that the Big Ten and the SEC are going to be good just because they have historical teams inside their conference that are going to be good every year, no matter what they do. They just have the resources to be good, and they're going to be good. Even if they have some slumps, they'll be right back up. We talked about it, not on air prior.
Yeah, they could be.
And what do you think about that? There's always room for those historical blue blood teams to rise back to the top. You're seeing it with Tennessee now. They're coming back up, and they're in a big market where they can get that NIL money. I think you're going to start seeing more teams from bigger cities do well. You're seeing Texas jump back up into it. Money talks, man. And if you're in a big city, there's bigger finances, there's bigger companies, and there's more backing. There's more money coming in.
Possibly. I mean, I always see the SEC having a stranglehold, primarily because if you're an elite player playing down in the South where it's warm all through December, extremely appealing. All your bowl games, predominantly your bowl games, are going to be a short drive. There's a strong appeal to that. Obviously, you have a built-in ravenous fan base in the SEC. Every team has that. So as a 17, 18-year-old kid, I absolutely see the appeal of that. And you're going to have strong boosters, alumni support, because football is life in a lot of those places in the South. So you're going to have the money too. But I think if you look at the 4 seed, Arizona State, Tempe, Phoenix, definitely a major city with a lot of that. So you could start to see some of that. But I think by and large, you're gonna have to see that too, just from the alumni and the donor bases and
the alumni, yeah. And there was a stat I saw while I was at the Big Ten championship game, and it said Penn State has the largest active alumni base.
I don't know what metric they're using the quantity.
It was just something that flashed up on the scoreboard.
Yeah, I'm not arguing it. I just don't understand what that means. So.
Doug is in here. Illinois and Minnesota were playing good football at the end of last season, and a lot of SEC teams regressed this season. The SEC isn't as good as it has been. I don't think the thing about the SEC this year is they didn't have that dominant team, the one that everyone feared and was like, no one's losing to them. But they had a really, really good, second tier where it's like they could win a title. We'll see what happens. They have a really good conference, and they're always going to have a really good conference. So I don't necessarily agree with that. I just think it's different than it has been in the past, where there's not that one or two teams at the top that no one can touch.
And I agree with that, but I think we're also bearing the lead when you start looking at overall records and standings and all this stuff, because the SEC plays an 8-game schedule. As far as I'm aware, and somebody can fact check me, just about every SEC school also schedules an FCS opponent. So there's a guaranteed one win on your schedule that you're not seeing when you're looking at the standings. So they play 8 conference games. They always schedule an FCS team, usually in their November bye week. So there can be a little bit of fluff when you start saying Georgia or Florida 7-5, Arkansas 6-6, Vandy, Oklahoma 6-6, Auburn 5-7. We're not going to sit here and break down their schedules, but I bet there's a lot of non-conference fluff with those 6-6 schedules. So that's another thing too. You got to start elevating to at least 9. 10 might be a little extreme, because I'm always going to support the smaller schools. And I don't even have a problem with the FCS schools. I just think you should only schedule FCS in September. You should never schedule outside of September. But I like giving money to the HBCU schools, the MAC schools, all these other schools. I like cutting them checks.
Absolutely. Support another football program.
Yeah. Well, look at
Kent State scholarship.
Kent State University every year schedules Oklahoma or Washington or Penn State or Tennessee. They schedule these teams, they get their brains beaten in, and they fund their athletic department.
Let's get Lavelle in here. Let me talk about Lavelle real quick. Go Bucks. Let's rebound. Let's make it to the Rose Bowl. That's my thoughts exactly. That's what I want to do. I want to be out in sunny California enjoying the Rose Bowl. I want to be there in person for the first time ever and see those sights, man. The San Gabriel Mountains and that matchup with Oregon. How sweet would that be? How sweet would that be, man?
It's gonna be sweet, man. But I'll tell you, Oregon is absolutely brutal in the sense that they are just a really complete football team. And hey, so
this is
getting out there just to see it.
This is kind of your neck of the woods. Read that one. Tell me what you think.
Chris is saying, he's talking about the Power 4 conference champions and make them the first round of the playoffs. Have a 4 playing game from the group of 5. Magically, that creates 16 teams. Match a Power 4 conference champion against the 4 group of 5 winners. You have a very easily defined 16-team playoff that after one round turns into 8 teams and nothing but teams that won their way in. I love it, Chris. The problem is you're never going to get ADs to sign on the college kids. The colleges, by and large, playing 15, 16, 17 games. You're talking NFL schedule at that point. So I like it, but it's real tricky from –
I don't know. We'll see what happens with this college football playoff. Maybe the money talks and the bullshit walks, and they're like, yeah, sign us up. But I think you need those. Did we have any at large in here?
Yeah, he's talking group of 5, G5, group of 5. So
you take the Power 4 conference champions, make them the first round playoffs.
Probably.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's call it 1 through 4.
The problem is you need to redefine how you get to the conference championship game, because some of these teams didn't deserve to be there because of their artificially created schedules. They weren't playing some of the best teams. So you could have had Rutgers in the championship game because they didn't play Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan. They didn't play any of the top teams. If they would have made it in, that would have been a complete travesty.
What about your tiebreaker being conference strength of schedule?
That would be a better tiebreaker.
And I'm saying conference, right? So I'm not going to sit here with the non-conference argument, but say the 9 teams you play.
That.
Let's say there were 4 teams that had 1 loss in the Big Ten. You would stack rank them based on your conference strength of schedule. So if you went 8-1, but you played Indiana's strength of schedule versus, I don't know, somebody else who had a tougher one, that's how you'd see them over. But you're never going to strike this perfect balance. And the Florida State example we used earlier is the perfect example where you try to schedule an elite team and they go 3-9. So you can do the best you can, and you're never going to know back in August. None of us formerly known as Big Ten backers, were predicting Indiana to go 11-1. None of us were.
No.
So you're always going to have that outlier. You're always going to have that dud. That's what makes scheduling tough. That's why strength of schedule, after it's all said and done, it shows you the true grit of your team.
What uniforms are Ohio State going to rock?
Got to go classic.
I think they got to do the 2015. Do that national title uniform, the gray sleeves. I love the gray stripe sleeves. Those are always awesome. But from what I'm hearing, it's going to be a scarlet out theme, which is okay.
They have an all scarlet jersey.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. That's what we're leaning towards. But
I like it because there is no historical precedence here. So what I like about this is Ohio State is
establish it.
You could do black. You could do all black. You could do the scarlet. I hope Tennessee wears their orange. I like that look with Tennessee, the white jersey, the orange pants. I think that's just a classic college football look. But yeah, I'm not a huge uniform guy. Everything looks good when you're winning. Everything looks bad when you're losing. So,
hey, Ron, I hope the SEC rips through this playoff. All right.
You know that I think you alluded to this earlier, and it's spot on. I don't think you can make the argument for Oregon, but really outside of Oregon, I really don't see this elite team staring at us. I think you can make the argument Oregon could win, Ohio State could win it all, Texas, Georgia, even Tennessee. To be honest with you, I wouldn't be super shocked by. Penn State, I would be, but I think this is a wide open bracket.
I would love for Ohio State to schedule an SEC opponent every year. There was a couple of years where they did schedule back-to-back, and they got someone backed out of the scheduling for whatever reason. I think there was an Alabama on there, but there's some in the future. There's Texas coming up real quick.
Georgia, I believe, is 29.
Georgia's on too.
Subject to change. But, I mean, we talked about it beforehand. Why are we not playing Tennessee more? I think that's kind of odd, being just close proximity to powerhouse programs. I would love to see Ohio State have at least once a year, a non-conference against a decent to good SEC team. High school teams playing 17 games. Yeah, you do. You have a couple. Even at D3, D3, D2, FCS level, they always had playoff brackets there. So there were a lot of college football teams playing 15 games to win a title when FBS wasn't even doing that. So they are getting up with that, and the money helps. Because that wouldn't be a good show, Chris. If we just called it luck of the draw, we'd be done in 6 minutes.
Luck of the draw. Let's close up shop here.
I like it.
Anyway,
God bless.
Man, the locker room is on fire again today. So let's get into talking about Tennessee. What the matchup is, what we got. We did enough of this playoff talk. The seeding's jacked up. Get more conference schedules. 10 teams, 10 games in conference. I want to see it. We'll know who the real winner of the conference is. Then you don't have these jacked up conference championship games that really aren't the best two teams in the conference.
No, and we'll just close out with this. I've been beating this drum on I want tougher schedules. I want better college football games. And I absolutely applauded the SEC this year because they were great college football games throughout the regular season because they finally said a loss isn't going to kill you. We're not going to make this schedule. We're going to make it real. And as college football fans, when we turned on the TV at night, we were getting great matchups every single week. What scares me is Alabama's AD coming out and saying, I need to reevaluate our schedule next year because of what happened. And he's spot on. And just so everyone's aware, Alabama's non-conference next year, Wisconsin and Florida State. Not elite, right? They don't look elite like this second, but I'll tell you what, that sounds a lot better than a lot of other I'm playing. And if you actually look at their schedule that they have next year, when you're looking at their conference schedule, they got LSU, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina, Missouri, on top of Wisconsin and Florida State. So he's probably looking at those two matchups saying, why am I playing Wisconsin and Florida State? And now we're taking away from quality matchups throughout the season because this committee put in a team that didn't deserve to be in an SMU over Alabama.
Good
And I
on
need to take a
Bama.
shower because I just made a case for Alabama making the playoffs. I feel gross. I'm sorry, y'all.
Hey, we got to get to a commercial before we get any further. Coming back after this, we will talk about the matchup. It's going to be mostly a statistics show because we haven't got into the film yet. Getting into the film later this week and watch a little bit more Tennessee coming right up after this.
Yum, yum, get you some. Yum, yum, get you some. Yum, yum, get you some. Yum, yum, get you some.
Gano seasoning, food's favorite flavor.
Yum, yum, get you some.
I'm Joe Burrito, your favorite burrito. Whoa, whoa.
Joe, we
Hey.
all know you're the best.
What?
You can always do better.
What you got?
Try the new Dano's Hot Chipotle.
Hey. Ooh, that's spicy. Yum, yum.
Yum, yum, get you some.
Yeah, the Will Howard inconsistencies, that has been a problem in big games so far this year, minus Indiana. He played well against Indiana. Really, really poor game against Michigan. But some of that was play design and coaching, I believe. So let's get into that. Bring on the Vols. Better watch what you're asking for, OSU. And he had a little laugh after that. Hey, man, I got respect
for it. Yeah, I'm not saying bring on the Vols.
Absolute respect. Great team. They have a good traveling fan base. I mean, tradition is awesome. Going through that T, seeing that orange. Love it. Absolutely love it. I love them being back. I do think their coach looks like Bobby from King of the Hill, which is funny to me. I don't know why. But, yeah, man, Vols are awesome. And it would be, if I grew up in Tennessee, I'd probably be a Vols fan. I mean, why wouldn't I be?
Yeah.
Rocky Top, awesome. Love the song. And it's catchy, too. Sometimes I find myself singing it, so I got to get that shit out of my head right now.
You really do, man. And
right.
I think the narrative.
Let's go. Let's dig in.
But the narrative around Day is going to define itself next Saturday. He wins this game. Okay, you can breathe a little bit. He won a big game. Move on. He loses this. It tells us everything we need to know about Ryan Day. It does. And listen, you want to start going back to some of his playoff losses. You can start really breaking down the film. Okay, questionable play calling against Georgia at the end, missed field goal. Clemson game, bad interception at the end. Guy fell down, whatever the case was. That was a 6-point game. They were driving. A lot of questionable things in that game, by the way, a targeting call, I'll never forget. I'm not sitting here making excuses, but I'm also not going to sit here and say, well, Ryan Day gets his doors blown off in big-time games. He's got to overcome that, but he's also not getting his doors blown off either.
Yeah, Day does everything to lose, whereas Tennessee has everything to lose. Whereas, yeah, he does have everything to lose. You're absolutely right. And Tennessee probably can play loose because they don't have to win this game. Tennessee's on the rise again, and they're coming back. So it's not expected necessarily from their fan base from what I've seen so far, but it's something that they wouldn't be surprised if they win this game. If they lose a game, cool, you made it to the playoffs. Circle back around and the next couple of years be one of those dominant teams that's shooting for a national title.
Nobody should.
It wouldn't surprise me.
I don't think nationally. I don't think nationally people would be surprised if Tennessee wins this game. It's an 8-9 matchup. These are two really good teams. This is a Tennessee team that plays in the SEC that's used to these kind of environments. I'm not going to be shocked if it happens. I'm also not going to be shocked if Ohio State wins. And I'll probably say that for the next month.
Let's dig into that. We got some stats on them. What about their offense? First, how do you say his name? Nico Iamaleava. I think I pronounced that correctly, but could be wrong. The offense has been kind of inconsistent, depending on the game. But the dude has an arm, and he's a deceptive runner. I think he's 6'6", got a strong arm, looks good. He's young. I mean, so young kids aren't going to know the offense 100%. There's going to be plays where they might read wrong. What I did notice about him in a quick film review of the Georgia game was he doesn't really look off the safeties. He seems to lock on to targets a little bit, and so DBs are able to kind of catch up and break on the route. And that's a quick review. There's probably games where he's looking off people. And we got the pronunciation up here by Levi, sorry.
I'm just going to go Nico I, man.
Like Ava. That's even harder to pronounce. Like
I know. I don't want to disrespect the kid by not saying his name right. I didn't do it. I'm just going to go Nico I.
Names to watch out for. Arian Carter. Boo Carter.
Well,
Dylan Sampson looks like a hard runner. And he's going to be a problem. He's going to be a thorn in the side. And Cooper Mays. I like the way that Dylan Sampson runs. Dude, he's a hard-ass runner. That's what I like. And he's not the type of guy that's going to, shy away from a hit. He's going to get those extra yards when you need them. Like to watch the kid play so far, what I've seen. Turnovers. Tennessee has gained 20 turnovers on the season. They've lost 15, 0.42 turnover margin. Pretty consistent with Ohio State. Ohio State's slightly better. They have lost 17 and gained 13. So 0.33, actually slightly worse, 0.33 turnover margin. Tennessee is 8th in points per game. They are scoring 37.7. Ohio State is 16th, 35.5 points per game. So, not anything completely jumping out offensively, one versus the other. You got to give the edge statistically to Tennessee. But Tennessee is 66th in passing offense. They're 9th in rushing, 232 yards per game. I think that kind of goes into Ohio State's favor. Ohio State definitely plays better against the run than they do against the pass. They have a stiffer defensive line, and their cornerbacks are sometimes questionable, right? Like, we like to do pass interference, really like to, especially against number one. And everyone knows him in the SEC. Transfer in from Ole Miss.
Carolina. Or was it Ole Miss?
Ole Miss.
Okay, not bad. I thought it was South Carolina.
Yeah. Igbinosa. You probably know of him if you're an SEC fan. Let's see here. Get more from the locker room. Yeah, we're talking ball now. Levi, hey, bring it to us, man. What else do you think? How is Tennessee going to attack Ohio State? I mean, I think they have a good running game. Their offensive line, from what I've seen so far, is good but inconsistent. Much like Ohio State's, good but inconsistent. So we'll see what happens. Their defense, that's where we really got to really turn the tide to. Look at the defense, man. Their defense, they have a great defense, a great defensive line. Ohio State struggled against it. Great defensive line their last time on that field. So what's going to happen, man? Tell me about this defensive line that they got at Tennessee, man. The elite defensive front.
It is elite. And
some will say it's better than Michigan's.
It could be. I think it's a little tough to compare because you're seeing Michigan's D-line kind of coming out in this 25 class. I don't have like Eason and Thomas, the D tackles. They may be juniors or seniors. I don't have that off the top of my head. But you're not seeing them being a part of NFL drafts yet. So that's where maybe a little bit more of that Michigan buzz is coming from. But it's elite. You got James Pierce as DN, 11 TFLs, 7.5 sacks. I mean, you're a solid year. You got your 2 D tackles that have combined for 12 TFLs. I love tackles for losses. I think it's one of the best metrics on the defense because you're not needing a penalty or a bad play to force a team back. You're causing the team to move behind the chains. So I absolutely love that. And they're 4th in the nation in yards against per run at 2.8. So basically, it's not even your 3 yards on a clouded dust. It's 2.8. So even when teams are trying to run against them, they're not effective and just not running the football. And this is where you have the unstoppable force meets the immovable object, where we saw the mentality of the Michigan game and the game plan that Chip Kelly and Ryan Day put in. And Chip Kelly loves to establish the run. We all think of air raid type passing at Oregon. No, he ran the ball a lot. He loves running the football. So are they going to look at this elite defensive line and say, come hell or high water, we're going to run the ball against this elite defensive line? And again, I think you're running right into the teeth of this defense. Or do you go tempo? Do you shake it up? Do you start running tempo plays, hoping to get some sustainable drives together and hoping by the 3rd and 4th quarter, you've wore out this defensive line and you can run the ball? Let's see.
Yeah, on the flip side, Ohio State has to rotate their defensive line. They have great backups on their defensive line. I don't know why they didn't do it against Michigan, but I hope to see that. That's one of the things I want to see in this game. If they don't do it, I'm going to be a little concerned because this is a good offense. We want them fresh. Watch the Vandy tape. They run a stack formation with 2 wide receivers to the right side. If your corner is backing off at the snap, they will light him up with 2 deep slants. And that's where you have to layer the defense too.
Yeah, and you've seen this a little bit more out of Knowles, and I like this. I used to scream for a decade, why didn't Ohio State ever mix up the coverage? Ohio State is notorious for man-to-man coverage. They love it. They have elite corners, and they say we can go basically man-to-man cover 2 and match up against anybody, or cover 1 in a lot of cases. You're starting to see Knowles sprinkle in that zone a little bit more. I really like the zone, and there is nothing better against the slant than zone coverage. So we'll see.
And Levi Squirrel did stick out to me on tape, and I do remember him a little bit, unique name in the recruiting process. I believe Ohio State was trying to get him as well. If Nico has a comfortable pocket, he is dangerous. With that being said, he's a redshirt freshman. And yeah, I have seen him do things. I can't remember what game it was, but he was good with clock management. He stepped out of bounds when he needed to conserve the clock, whereas Howard slid and took time
football
off the
IQ.
clock. Yeah. So football IQ seems to be maybe above his years, but you should know to step out of bounds anyway. He's not making the freshman mistakes all the time that I've seen.
No, they do. And their roster is loaded. This is a darn good Tennessee team coming in here. I think the only knock you could probably have on Nico, freshman, right? The kid's just probably only going to get better, but freshman's a little bit tough, right? So, and I'm not saying he's going to be intimidated, right? He's went to a lot of tough stadiums this year. It's just naturally tough as a freshman to continuously perform on that big stage, and that's all right. I think the one real differentiator, because we can sit here and list great Tennessee players all day long, we can do the same on Ohio State's side. A lot of great players on Ohio State's team. The biggest differentiator I saw, Tennessee, 102nd in the nation in red zone scoring. Who has the best red zone defense in all of college football? There's your difference. If you're Tennessee and you start getting into the 18-yard line and you start putting up field goals, I don't think field goals are going to cut it unless Chip Kelly just recycles the game plan from Michigan for this game, and then, field goals will cut it. But short of that, you got to score touchdowns in these type of games, and that red zone scoring is interesting.
The interesting thing about that is Tennessee's opponent red zone conversions are 11th in the country.
Yeah, I saw top 15 as well. So their red zone defense.
So their defense is stacked. Their red zone defense
is very stout. And that's
total D is 4th in the nation. Ohio State's is 1st. So it's going to be a defensive battle on paper if you're going by stats. What the glaring thing that you have to see from the start is Ohio State willing to take shots downfield to the receivers. They have freaks all over the place, 5-stars everywhere. You got to give them the ball, man. You got to have time to get them the ball, but you got to get them the ball.
And that's the thing where when you look at an elite defensive line like Tennessee has, you ask yourself, how do I neutralize that? And the best way to neutralize an elite defensive line, especially defensive tackles, tempo. If you are sustaining drives and running tempo, I don't care how great a shape you're in, by the third quarter, that is not sustainable. So if I'm Ohio State, I'm looking to run tempo. I'm looking to sustain drives. I don't need a 60-yard bomb first play of the game. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about
like Georgia did to Tennessee.
Yeah, but I'm talking an 8-play, 70-yard drive in 2.5, 3 minutes. Running tempo. And I'm not saying that's easy. That's tough, especially against a good Tennessee defense. But if there are series where you get that first down, like they like to do, you don't run tempo, you get that first down, then you start running tempo. I don't even want that because they've really struggled getting that first down in a lot of series. I want to see them running tempo, and then you're neutralizing that D line where after that fourth pass play, they've ran 30, 40 yards. They're a little bit tired. Maybe you soften them up a little bit to get 3-4 yards on that first rush carry.
This is what's interesting. Levi comes with some good comments here. On defense, the most questionable spot is linebacker. They're good but young. The rest of the defense is really, really tough. They got to be with stats like that, with what they're doing in the SEC. They got to be tough.
Yeah.
Where Ohio State can attack the best is probably linebacker. Their formations they love to run are the deep crossing routes. So linebacker and obviously your safety, Cooper, has to be really good too. You have a true freshman there that, has been a stud, but could make mistakes as a freshman can always do in big games. I really think that Ohio State can attack the linebacker position, especially in the passing game. And they better. But
that's
our kickers also got to make field goals too.
But that's the difference between the linebacker position, right? Where you're talking coverage linebacker versus, run stopping linebacker. Being a linebacker and run stopping, your life's a lot easier when your D line is dominating up front. So the real question is going to be, from Ohio State's perspective, is that line going to get to that second level? And are you going to kind of neutralize that run stopping ability of those linebackers, which we're hearing from commentators may be the weakness of a really good defense? They're still good, but it's the weakness of the three sections. Can they get to that second level and neutralize it from that perspective? And I think it's really tough to ask a lot of linebackers at the college level to kind of be in that coverage mode, because there's just a lot of spread offenses still, a lot of offense.
Yeah. K-Mac has been showing up as of lately, and Eric Houston got 3 steps by, Doug. Comes in to tell us.
Look, Doug's spot on, dude. He's exactly right.
Right. And I think that was in reference to I made the comment that I want to see the D-line rotation because they're studs. Behind our studs, there's studs at the D-line, and we need to utilize them.
Absolutely.
This is why I'm so hyped for this game. Strength on strength. Yeah, it should be an awesome game. By all metrics, this should be awesome.
I mean, and that's – I know you love talking stats, man, but you don't call me Vegas Matt for a reason. We got to dive into a little bit of the numbers, and I'm just
let's see what Vegas does. Hey,
well, I'm actually shocked by it, to be honest with you. And
part
of me is, when you're looking at these numbers, you're kind of wondering, is that – I don't want to call it Ohio State bias, because Vegas absolutely does not have a bias, but the fan base does. And looking at the line, it started at 7, it's jumped up to 7.5. I have to really look at that, and I say this is a really good Tennessee team, and I haven't watched a ton of them. Just kind of looking at the stats, what they've done as a team, both offensively and defensively. To sit here and say this could be a really hard-fought game, and Ohio State wins by 7. I mean, that's a good quality win, beating a Tennessee team by 7 points. Really good win if you can do it. So seeing the spread right now at 7.5, I think is really deceptive. What's even more deceptive is you're seeing over the last 48 hours, money's going 50-50.
You're seeing what?
It started at 7. It's jumped up to 7.5 with the spread.
Okay, yeah.
So right now, a lot of the books you're seeing are at 7.5. You may come across a book that's at 7.
And the over-under's gone up too.
The over-under's gone up a point, but I'll say where money's going the last 48 hours on that spread, it's been 50-50. So you're seeing money going both ways. I don't know if that's the Ohio State fan base just pumping money into Ohio State because it's Ohio State, and you're just seeing kind of the more national or the publics kind of saying, well, this is a good Tennessee team. I'll gobble up that 7.5. I get it. But the over-under started at 46.5. That's jumped up to 47.5. And you're seeing still about 78% of that cash going that over. So I think that spread's a little deceptive to me. I'd probably, especially if I saw that jump up to 8, I'd probably be leaning pretty heavily on taking those points with Tennessee. And in the over-under in a game like this, I would really just stay away from. I don't want to start calling this a weather game or saying weather's a factor. I think that's a weak argument. Yeah. But I also don't think
both teams have to play in it.
To do. Oh, both teams have to play in it. Absolutely.
So that's nothing.
You just don't know what Ohio State offense you're going to see. Are you going to see the one against Michigan? Or are you going to see what they did, in other parts throughout the year?
Yeah. And turnovers, that's going to be a big part of this game. Turnovers, explosive plays, always in big games. That's what matters most. Maximize your possessions because you can't lose any. You can't lose any possessions in big games like this.
But you've heard it now for what, 12 days, right? And I'm sure Will Howard has heard it for 12 days. The bad choices, the bad throws. Do you feel he's going to come out gunslinger or he's going to be shy?
No idea. Absolutely no idea.
Me neither.
I
That's what
don't
scares me.
know. That is scary. I just hope the play design, they're not running 3 receiver routes to the short side of the field, the boundary side of the field, not running toss sweeps or stretch plays to the short side of the field. There's nothing more unnerving to me than that. I hate seeing it. It's fundamental football. You don't do it. But we tend to do it a lot.
I mean, I also don't like the 5-yard hitch either, to be honest with you, especially on the outside. I think that's a long throw for a quarterback to make, and especially if you're seeing that cornerback playing tight coverage. As a wide receiver, you got to run a hell of a route to get that cornerback off you to run that 5-yard hitch.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw a few of those back when you watched that Michigan game again where Michigan was all over it. So you got to find a way to free up those cornerbacks a little bit to give you that option too. And usually that hitch is typically a little more open when it's not a 3-step drop. When you've kind of read the field a little bit, you see that cornerback fading away. That's when that hitch tends to be open. So I'm not so much in favor of just quick hitches, quick passes, 5-6 yards. I want to see that short, intermediate, deep route, those combinations from your wide receivers, and start telling Will Howard, pick the option that's open. If they're going to put safety over top and that threat's not open and that 5-yard hitch, they're playing you tight, look at those intermediate routes. Or tuck it in.
If you're Tennessee, where do you attack? You're gonna do tempo too, as someone's mentioned here. They always do. They slow down on 3rd down for some reason usually, but they do tempo every other play. Once they get something going, it's going quick. And they used to be a lot faster than this and a lot better than this. Maybe it's the young quarterback. I don't know. But they're going to try to attack that too. I think they should take those shots deep, test our corners quickly, because they can get heady. Like Denzel Burke is good. Igbinosa's good. But if you get in their heads early, as you saw against Oregon, take those shots downfield, they can start making mistakes.
I mean, I'll say this too, and this is where it's a blessing and a curse with Jim Knowles. He very much has that bend, don't break mentality, right? So he's very comfortable giving up yards between the 20s, and you see it. They have the number 1 red scoring defense in the country because they tighten up inside the 20. If I'm Tennessee, I'm rushing the football up and down the field because I will stand to this. I do not trust Ohio State's run defense outside of the red zone. So I really see that as an advantage for Tennessee, running the football. You have a really, really good running back. So in Samson, I don't see any reason why you're not running the football. That's where I think
especially that first drive.
Just any drive, man. I don't have the confidence in Ohio State's run defense to sustain that. But I also think Jim Knowles is saying, I'll give you your 8-yard run. I'll give you a 12-yard run when you're at the 40-yard line. I don't care, because when you get to the 18-yard line, that's when I'm going to stop you. So I understand that is his defensive mentality, not really my style, but that's what he's thinking. And ultimately, it's going to come down to, what does Tennessee do in the red zone? Are you kicking field goals or are you scoring touchdowns? Because that could be the difference in this game if Ohio State's offense executes the way we believe they can.
Or like this, I think that plays right into what Chris said. Chris was like, Tennessee struggles to sustain drives. You make them drive the field 12 to 15 play drives. They have a tendency to self-destruct, offense pre-snap penalties. Hey, that fits right up our alley as far as way our defense.
That's Knowles to a T. And I understand Knowles' philosophy, this concept of, we're going to make you can get 8 to 12 yards every drive as you're coming down. But the concept of putting together a 10, 12, 15 play drive, even in the NFL, you don't see that much. It is a very tough thing to do from an offensive perspective, and that's what Knowles says. However, that bend, don't break mentality doesn't always work.
The defense stops the run well. This is Tennessee's defense, and the pass rush has gotten home with the front four, causing forced throws. And most of the time, Will Howard's been pretty good, but against the bigger teams, he's made some mistakes. So that could be an issue. How does Ohio State handle running quarterbacks, mobile quarterbacks?
Not well. Not well,
but they really haven't faced a lot of runs against them. They did. It was Marshall that was running all over the field.
Marshall ran all over them. Northwestern.
Northwestern. Yeah, I forgot about Northwestern.
It's going to be our boss someday, I'm sure. But not a good quarterback. He ran all over us. They typically do not fare well with a running quarterback. And this is where I'd be interested to see, do you put Styles, right? In kind of that, spy type position. I think he has the athleticism to stay with a running quarterback. That does put additional pressure on your defense.
Yeah, we could have Sonny Styles spy him, and that would be a good matchup.
He's an athletic. He can spy a quarterback. He has the athleticism too. You certainly don't want to put downs on somebody like him. He has the athleticism, but you're taking an important chess piece off the field in that regard.
Yeah, and how Downs plays will be a big part of this game too, because he's got to keep coming downfield with authority, and he will.
He's the least of our concerns.
Exactly.
The least of our concerns.
He's going to get there. Let's see. All right.
Yeah, I like the comments about the game. I like this, man.
These are awesome. Yeah, people are bringing really good comments, really good stats, really good observations about both teams. This has been awesome.
I think that's the consensus is and hopefully we're getting some Tennessee folks listening, right? Really good team, have a lot of elite players on their team as well too. I think most logical fans here, whether you be a Buckeye fan or Tennessee fan, this is going to be a tough game. It's going to be a tight game. It could be 42-35. It could be 17-10 at one point. I have no idea which way the offenses are going to go in this game or the mentality of it. Do people get tight in the first half? But I think these are two really good football teams where there are some unique matchups. I think Tennessee is going to be favorable running the ball. They're going to be favorable stopping the run, which are two things that hurt Ohio State. But I think Ohio State's red zone defense is really going to stifle Tennessee when they get down there. So
absolutely. That's one place that Ohio State's been good all year, and they're going to continue to be good. The way that a team beat it was Oregon scoring outside the red zone, those explosive plays.
That's a great point.
And that's one thing that I haven't looked up yet to see where Tennessee was at with explosive plays. So if you want to get on that while I read some of the other defensive stats that I saw, 93 total tackles for a loss for this Vols defense. That's 9th in the nation. You talked about how you love tackles for a loss. This defense is no joke, dude. No joke. They're 17th in the nation in passing defense, 178.7 yards per game. So I think where Ohio State has to attack is going to be over the middle on those deep crossing routes and through the air. And this is what I want to see from the start. Take some shots. Take some shots. Do not try to run at this team like you would anyone else. Start the game off with your passing game, mid-range passing, because that's what Will Howard's good at. 10 to 15-yard passes downfield. Great at that. You can get it out quick and just throw the damn ball up to Smith. Throw it up to Jeremiah Smith. I've said it before. I'll say it again. He has a 99-yard catch radius. Get him the damn ball. 10-plus targets in this game.
Okay. I got you.
He's going to need it.
So explosive plays this year, they've had 56 of them, which is 9th in the SEC.
So that's actually pretty low. Yeah.
It's pretty low.
Mid. It's mid, I guess. And that's ranking explosive plays 20-plus yards?
Plus yards, yes. 20-plus yards. 33 of those were passes, 23 of them were runs. So
very good.
Yeah. And that's, again, I think that's the secret here if you're Tennessee is I think running the football is going to be quite effective. I'm going to keep banging it, and I know Ohio State fans don't like it because you keep telling me Knowles' mentality. I think Tennessee is going to be wildly effective running the ball. The key is going to be how are you running the ball inside that 20. If they're starting to get 4 yards of carry inside the 20, you got to start getting real little concerned about that. But if they're only getting 2 yards of carry inside the 20, then I think Knowles is on to something.
What's interesting is where we'd have to shift stuff around for their defense. They got better defensive ends than they do defensive tackles. They're both good. But where that matchup concern lies is what we've had to change around in the interior of our offensive line, right?
Yep.
Because we moved our All-American over to left tackle. I think we can get out wide, start inside, and then work our way out, running up the middle more.
Possibly, but I really don't want to see this run first mentality in the first half. I want to see a pass first mentality.
Absolutely.
And another thing I've noticed, and I don't know why Chip Kelly or Ryan Day doesn't do this more, but I definitely noticed this quite a bit in the Penn State game, and I actually saw it a few times in Northwestern as well. You got Donovan Jackson playing left tackle. Bless him, man. He's an All-American, and he's busting his butt out there. But what you don't see out there is chipping the end, especially on third downs. This is something I absolutely love, and you could be having your second string tight end do this, Thurman or somebody do this. But what I've seen, especially against good DNs, is you're leaving Jackson one-on-one, and that is tough for any tackle to do at any level. And what I want to see a little bit more coming out here is giving him a little bit more help with that chip, whether it's from the tight end or the running back, and just kind of take Pierce or one of them off their game a little bit, give Jackson a little bit more support. It gives Howard some more time as well.
If they pass on first down, Doug, and I'm in the press box, it is going to be really hard not to jump up and down.
Amen, dog.
I'll be so happy. But
how about this? Ohio State
get to the press
Ohio
box.
State gets the kickoff, right? Everyone's jacked up, touchback, get the ball. First play, they run up the middle for 1 yard. What do you think that stadium is going to sound like?
Oh, Herbie was right.
Right there on that first play.
Herb Streak was right. They might boo.
They might boo on that first play. If he runs like left guard 1 yard, you could start hearing booing already.
It might be, a little bit. But what if they did it twice in a row, first and second down? The Boo Birds are out for sure.
I'll tell you what, I'm not even going to be mad if the opening possession for Ohio State, they go 3 and out, if all three are pass plays. And to me, what you're saying is we're setting the tempo. We're going to go out doing what we do best, which is passing the football. Unfortunately, it's not running the football. It's a good run game. Quinshawn,
unless those passes are really short passes to the boundary side, I'll be pissed. I will be pissed still. Because all you're doing is, throwing one shitty play call into another shitty play call. And
just
three receiver passing routes to the boundary side are infuriating. I can't see that.
I agree. And that's where I really want to see that. But I think the point is, I don't even care if the first series or two, you're kind of going 3 and out or only get a first down. It's going to be about the play calling that's going to decide.
Absolutely.
That. And this is a playoff game,
Open
right?
Up that defense. Yep.
Yeah, a couple possessions where you go 3 and out or you don't get points the right way. It's a playoff game. You're playing a really good team. This isn't Northwestern. So I think it's really going to be more about scheme and play calling that we're going to be focused in on in that first half as opposed to actual numbers and stats.
Hey, before we get any further, let's get that College Football Dogs Media Network some love. Boom.
On the College Football Dogs website, you'll find a main page that features some of our biggest and newest stories. Our conference pages for content related to your favorite team's conference. Our team store, where we have products that are available all year long, as well as gear available for a limited time only. Our podcast page, where you can see when one of the 12+ College Football Dogs podcasts is streaming live on social media. Our subscription page, where you can join our Discord. If you're interested in becoming a contributor at College Football Dogs, email us at info@collegefootballdogs.com. If you enjoyed any College Football Dogs content, we really do appreciate any donations you can make by visiting the donate page on our website or scanning the QR code here.
College Football Dogs, for the fans.
If Doug is like me, you get hungry when you see that commercial every single time.
I agree.
You can't get Joe Burrito, but you can definitely get that Dano's seasoning for your burritos. Good stuff. Tim Banks is the defense coordinator. Thanks, Jeremy. I think that's the first comment from Jeremy we've had, so thanks for joining the show. Mr. 07 Freedom, what's that dog smoking?
Don't worry about it, Mr. 07. Don't worry about it.
If you don't know, you can't afford it.
Yep.
All right, brother. What else do we got? We got more from the locker room. I think we're commented out. We've had way too many. They broke the comment machine. The locker room is officially empty.
Man. It was good, especially when we're actually talking football again. I like it. A lot of good comments from the locker room.
It felt like we had some really, really good Tennessee fans coming on, knowledgeable Tennessee fans.
That's what we like.
And
come
what
on,
I've
come
seen
on
so far, okay, LOL.
No, come on
next
Thursday too, because again, we really want to break down this game next Thursday. You know, as we're about, we'll be 2 days out at that time. Definitely want to hear from the Tennessee fans what you think are strengths, what you think are weaknesses. We're definitely going to take a critical eye on this. Obviously, we're going to be a little biased towards Ohio State, but flat out, Steven, I think this is going to be a hell of a football game against two really good football teams.
And I'm excited. I mean, what better matchup could you ask for when you're getting dealt that? I mean, just for like the fanfare of it, for the hype, at night, 8:00 in the shoe in December, one of the best in the SEC against one of the best in the Big Ten. You got two conference titans clashing in the shoe, man. Awesome. Ohio State has everything to lose.
Yeah.
Tennessee can just come out and play however they want. They can play loose. You win this game, man, you ascend to the next level, right?
You can't. I mean, this was one of the things in 2014 that I absolutely loved about the Ohio State run they made. In their final 3 games of that season, they were the underdogs in all 3: Wisconsin, Alabama, Oregon. And you sure as hell know that Urban Meyer used that. I love being the underdog. And if I'm Josh Heupel, I'm telling my team every day when that line moves from 7 to 7.5, you're 7.5 point underdogs. We're Tennessee. We're in the SEC. I love that narrative of being an underdog. It's a scary team, man. And quite honestly, as Buckeye fans, I don't think we're going to breathe until that game's over. I don't think I can even enjoy the pageantry of a playoff December night game in the shoe until it's done and Ohio State wins, and then I can reflect on it.
For sure. Well, a cold December night, it'll look a lot like the Michigan low scoring and down to the wire. I agree with that. I'm about to take the under. I mean, I got to wait until next week to decide for sure, but I'm leaning towards the under at this time.
I think what's more important is always no precipitation, which, again, we're talking 12 days or 11 days out from what I saw. It didn't look like there was any precipitation, and it didn't look like it was a wind. I think most football players will say, I don't mind playing in the cold as long as it's clear and as long as there's no wind. I think when you start adding those variables, that's where it factors in that over and under. I don't think cold in and of itself really bothers a lot of football fans. Now you start getting to that Kansas City Miami playoff game where it was -5. That's a whole different ball game. But being 30, nah, I don't see that being a factor.
Not at all. TJ jumps on, just coming on to say go Vols. Absolutely, man. Thanks for joining us. Hey, if you have anything for next week, any questions for us, pop them off. We will answer them. You can even put them on after the show, and we can answer it for the next show too. So come on back. Best of the weekend. I agree. Absolutely best of the weekend. It might be one of the best games of the playoffs. You never know how it's all going to turn out.
Definitely want to hear about it from Tennessee fans, especially any areas where you question is Ohio State strength or a weakness, anything like that. Definitely want to get into that next Thursday show as well.
First day of winter. I didn't even put 2 and 2 together. Absolutely right.
It is. That'll be good.
Mr. 007 coming with it.
I think it's just 1-0.
Oh, I mean 0-7. It just sounded right, I guess. I don't know. Sometimes I just throw extra letters or words or numbers.
Sounds about right.
Good talk, fellas. I came to talk smack, but I enjoyed it. Hey, man.
Hey, good comments. Yeah, good comments.
Some of the best comments of the day, Levi.
Yeah. We don't mind cracking fun at us, dude. We make fun of ourselves all the time too. We want it to be good natured.
He did say a little bit about it. He talked about it in his press conference that there may be some changes in the offensive line. One of the reporters asked, and that was my question to ask that I wasn't able to get in. They didn't call on me to ask a question yet. But I was going to ask about the offensive line reshuffling, and they did ask about it. He said he doesn't want to get into that yet. So, yes, there will be some changes in the offensive line. Not sure exactly what they will be. Mostly, from the sounds of it, when he was questioned a little bit more, some of the younger guys that haven't got a chance have been practicing well. Josh Padilla was one of them specifically mentioned, and I can't remember who else was mentioned that would probably get some playing time or at least a chance to earn it in practice.
I'm not seeing anything on Hinsman having an injury. He's talking about the center possibly being hurt. Have you heard anything about?
I think he's talking about McLaughlin, who's a Remington. When he tore his Achilles.
He's never.
We have two, pretty much
declared.
All-American or two NFL starters probably that are out on our offensive line. Josh Simmons was our left tackle too,
but he's been out for a while, and then. Goffman
came to talk smack too, but changed my mind. Hey, we love it, man. Talk a little bit of smack, but give us some football knowledge too. That was the best part about this, man. When Levi came with some football knowledge, it was great talks, man. We love it.
All of them. Doug brought some solid stuff too. We appreciate.
Doug definitely. We had a bunch of guys in the locker room that were talking and giving us some good shit. No, Doug had a lot of comments on here, and Chris for sure. Chris is always in there.
Yeah, Chris was bringing the knowledge. I like it.
That's just normal. And Chris is a good SEC fan, so he likes to bring it. And was raised in Iowa, I want to say, too.
No, and I get it. And in this whole year, I seem to be defending the SEC, but I think I am really starting to get to a point where just watching really good college football teams and good football programs playing, and especially in a format like this, you just kind of have to tip your cap and have respect for it. So it is nice to see that blend.
I put this one back up here, Lavelle, because it was just my thoughts exactly. I'm ready for this. I want to get to Pasadena. I want to be out there. I want to watch a game from the Rose Bowl. Bought my plane tickets already, so hopefully that doesn't backfire. We'll see how it goes. All right. Any last words? Go for it.
No, I mean, I don't want to look ahead. I want to beat Oregon. So not that anybody should be looking ahead of Tennessee. That's full stock. But I really just want that Rose Bowl game in Oregon, and I want to beat Oregon just to reestablish who should be at the top of the Big Ten. I know it's not in writing, but it just feels good.
You heard it here first, man. Full talk, and you're talking it. You just made fun of yourself. Call yourself a fool.
It is, man. You should never be looking ahead. And Tennessee's an elite program. It's going to be a hell of a game. I'm just saying wishful thinking. That's what I really want to see. So
yes, sir. All right, let's get on out of here so we have more for the show next week. I don't think we'll do a morning after because there's no after to be had. So follow us, subscribe, like, join the channel. Come on in. Keep making those comments because it's been awesome. The locker room has been full today, and it's been a good time, man. Again, thanks for the Vols fans that have come to join us, and thanks for coming in to plan on talking smack, but just talking some football and having some good quality conversations, man. It's been awesome. One more here from the locker room. Hi. Hit that like button, everyone. Appreciate it, Doug. All right, peace out. God bless you all, and hopefully we see some of the Vols fans in the shoe, man. We'll see you. Peace out.